Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As a business and healthcare law firm, we are sometimes triggered by certain buzzwords our clients will say in conversation. We know there's potential disaster when we hear these words and are immediately on high alert. This season's theme is red flags.
Michael, do I look different to you today?
Ding. I'm almost afraid to answer. Why do you ask?
I received an email just a few minutes ago that I won another best lawyer type trophy, and I'm wondering if I look different now.
First of all, Brad, the humans out there call those awards, not trophies. But I call them trophies too, but maybe we have a commonality there. Let me guess, a random marketing company informed you that you are the best lawyer in the galaxy.
It's weird, Michael. It's almost like you got the exact same email. I guess our podcast might be popular, maybe on other planets now.
Well, I would think so. I mean, we try hard. We publish this on, I think, all, if not most of the podcast channels that are out there. So I guess our reach is far. So we shouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah.
But I do think we should share with our audience a little bit of the kind of behind the scenes on all these, as you call trophies, lawyer awards that are out there.
Well, the general concept is relatively often you will receive an email that we've been recognized best in form or fashion. And now we have this opportunity to purchase an advertising or promote our award.
Yeah. So you get an email that says you won, and then they say, and you can promote it here. And then, of course, you can also then buy a plaque or a trophy.
All right. Now, we're not putting these things down because, to be fair, Michael, several of these awards are actually legitimate, and it truly is an honor to receive.
Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, some of the awards have kind of a peer nomination element to them, and they tend to be more legit than kind of the pay for fake trophy awards, like Best Lawyer in the Galaxy. Sorry, buddy. That's one of the ones. There's no alien peers out there that voted for you. But for example, you and I both have been super lawyers for many years with several of our partners, and that's always an honor when we receive that recognition.
Yeah, and the best lawyer and best law firm as recognized by U.S. News. It's pretty cool also.
Yep, for sure. But it is hard sometimes to know who are the legit award organizations and which ones are trying to make a quick buck off of our competitive egos.
As long as you recognize that I'm better than you, and then I know it's a legitimate award, and that's how I know.
That if the award organizations say Brad's better than Michael.
Yes, that's legitimate.
Okay, yeah. Ding. Well, a close cousin to these, quote, best awards are the companies who hand out new titles to their employees, kind of like candy.
Yeah, these are often as, well, you're not going to get a raise or bonus, but you have a brand new cool title. And we see this routinely, especially in the startup world.
I know. I saw a meme recently that was red flags for women on dating apps. And they said to watch out if a guy lists himself as an entrepreneur, a founder, or a CEO. They say the translation is that they're unemployed.
I'm going to have to ding you. Isn't your title CEO?
Yes, Brad, and we're both entrepreneurs and founders. So I don't think it's a good idea to ding me because you're basically dinging yourself at the same time.
Rats. Okay, I withdraw my ding.
And so don't forget about the banks.
Yeah, everyone is a VP of something. We see special titles also in the medical field as well.
Yeah, I mean, in elective medicine specifically, you'll have titles that are created, that have really a marketing purpose behind it.
Yeah, a common one you might see is nurse injector.
Yeah, there's no formal certification for a nurse injector. It's not part of their nursing program, but they want people to know that they're specialists, for neurotoxins and fillers.
Yep. And there's been a lot of controversy recently with physician assistants There's a national group called the American Academy of Physician Assistants. They have changed their name to the American Academy of Physician Associates.
Yeah, the PA's movement was not liking the term assistant in their title. And then now they're getting pushback from the physicians because the physicians think that this will be confusing, that if you call someone a physician associate, it'll somehow imply or confuse the patient or the world that they are actually physicians and not, a physician associate.
Yeah, and most importantly for everyone who's been following this, understand that your license really is issued by your medical board in your particular state. So PAs cannot just change it just because some organization has recommended it. It is state dependent.
Yeah, I mean, they can actually get in a lot of trouble. They can follow their trade association and do it, and a medical board in a particular state can, come down on them because they're not designated themselves according to the license that they received.
Michael, yeah, I mean, all fascinating, but today we're not here to talk about PAs or nurse practitioners or nurse injectors or VPs or the best lawyer in the galaxy.
I had to try to match your whisper. Our red flag today is a popular title and a classic red flag here at ByrdAdatto when we hear it. Medical estheticians. Ding. Good use, Brad. Good use. Let's get into today's story.
Ding.
Brad, that's a little too much there. Our story today centers around two hip brothers who started a high-profile medical spa in San Francisco.
Ding.
What now, Brad?
I don't know. I was just testing this with my ding button. Still working.
Okay, I'm putting Riley on notice that she may have to mute you
Riley,
if you don't stop the extra dinging.
All right, I'll try to do better. But I do love this season because I can ding you.
Yes, I'm experiencing that. I'm feeling it deeply, Brad. Okay, back to our story. We're going to call the brothers the Froes.
Ding. Seriously, you just can't make up a word and expect me to restrain myself. Even though you just lectured me. Don't mute me, please, yet. Hold on. What does that even mean?
Well, I combined founder and bros to call them the Froes. It seems like a hipster name.
I'm not certain about the hipster name, but it seems more like a douchey name, maybe.
Well, if the shoe fits, let's just say that the Froes were both.
Okay.
They were kind of fake hipsters, so there was definitely this douchey element to them.
I'm getting I think maybe I'm not just me, but everyone maybe getting a clear picture now. So did you provide any bottle service at your whiteboard meeting?
I am certain that would have been well received, but no, the Froes, thankfully, were actually not a client. They had asked one of our clients to be a medical director.
Ding. Did we do a show, or were we going to do a show, a medical director?
No, but we will in a few weeks, Brad. Good memory. You've been paying attention during our planning for this season.
That's good.
And you are correct to ding the term medical director. And our help with this client, the proposed medical director, set forth a flurry of ding-worthy statements. But today, because we're going to do another episode on medical directors, we're going to try to focus the dings to an aspect of this story. And so a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about when we do the medical director story in a few weeks will actually happen in this story as well. But this is there's plenty of dings to be discussed just in our little focus that we'll have today.
All right, so let me guess. There are medical estheticians involved in this story.
Ding! Impressive, Brad. How did you figure that out?
Well, you'll remember I am one of the best lawyers in the galaxy, according to this email I received. And also the title of the episode is Red Flags, Medical Estheticians.
Well, I'm a little less impressed now, but yes, there are medical estheticians coming soon in our story. But let's first introduce our client, Dr. Ivy.
Is it like a gardener? I just explained.
Well, Dr. Ivy was Ivy League trained and had a new and growing practice. He thought being affiliated with the Froes brand would skyrocket his practice. And he also strongly, I can't emphasize this enough, strongly did not want to go to jail or lose his license. So he called us to help him with this.
So first off, I'm glad that he strongly really doesn't want to go to jail and lose his license. That's a sign of a very smart and intelligent person. But I'm still waiting for the medical estheticians. Where do they come in?
Fine, Brad. Now, I'll bring you in now. I was prepping for a call with the Froes and Dr. Ivy to discuss Dr. Ivy's role. And again, I won't get into the half a dozen other compliance problems I'd red flagged, but I'm sure you can picture it with the name like the Froes.
Yes.
I decided to look up the procedures offered and the staff on the Froes website to understand Dr. Ivy's role.
Oh no, let me guess. They're asking Dr. Ivy to be a medical esthetician?
Ding. Okay, Brad. It doesn't even make any sense.
No.
Yeah, he's a doctor. Ivy League trained doctor. They're not going to ask him to be a fake made up term like medical esthetician. He's going to be asked to supervise. So Brad, I see you drinking something over there. I'm starting to be curious if that's actually tea.
It is my tea. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I saw on the website at least 12 people with the title medical esthetician specializing in body sculpting procedures.
Oh, dang.
Yes, Brad. Bravo. This is a problem. Let's talk about what a medical esthetician is exactly in the eyes of the state, because you aren't going to find it if you go to the state, any board's website.
Nope.
But typically a medical esthetician is an esthetician licensed by the state's Board of Cosmetology. That's probably the only license you're going to find if you look them up anywhere you can in that state. But then somewhere along the way, they start to assist with medical procedures. They put the name medical in front of their esthetician name.
Yeah, I'm going to ding that part of it, because the Board of Cosmetology does not provide esthetician in most states. The scope of practice actually provide medical services.
Oh, exactly. I mean, their title was a huge spotlight screaming to the world that they're not compliant. It is legally impossible, to your point, from a compliance perspective in many states, to be an esthetician and provide medical services. And so if you call yourself a medical esthetician, you're just like putting up a huge blaring sign to the regulators.
Yeah, it's like a strobe light. Well, that does trigger me almost every single time I see it. The Froze website could, and probably if ever investigated, would literally be used against them and Dr. Ivy for compliance.
I know. Let's take a break. Let's go into commercial. And on the other side, let's talk a little bit more about the implications with using this term medical esthetician.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123's at ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, this season theme is red flags. We talked about the Froze and Dr. Ivy and the term medical esthetician. If it's not compliant to use this term, why do people use it?
Well, I'll be generalizing, but as we said, it's a marketing term. And so there tends to be this feeling after an esthetician takes a course for training on a procedure like body sculpting, that they are now something more than an esthetician. And so terms like medical esthetician are born.
Yeah, I mean, they're born out of training courses, which is important, Michael. Anytime a provider uses a medical device or provides some type of medical service, we all believe they, and you should, have the skills to render such medical service. However, just because you got skills does not necessarily mean you're actually allowed to do it. And that's where the confusion comes. There's a control. There's a control by your boards, or however you want to look at it, by what is the scope of practice of your particular profession.
And it gets even more confusing because a lot of these industry classes that will, as you said, train you how to use them, and that's beneficial. They don't know who's allowed to do what. And
Right.
so they're going to train people, and there's this pretty mass confusion that ensues because they think, well, I've got this body sculpting course from this company that said you now know how to do it, you're now certified, and they think that that somehow translates to a state level, and so it can cause some big problems. And obviously, we get called sometimes when clients are not happy that they bought a device that they thought their medical esthetician could operate, and then they learn otherwise.
Yeah.
And to make it more confusing, the term medical esthetician is not necessarily a problem in some states.
True. And a little bit of a twist. As noted earlier, the Board of Cosmetology does not typically give the scope of practice for medical procedures to an esthetician. Let's talk about two ways it would be possible for an esthetician to be a help in a medical procedure, which might then allow them to arguably use that term.
Yeah. And arguably it probably is a stretch even then. But we can at least talk about where in the world, when can an esthetician touch a medical service? And that's at least substantively getting us somewhere.
Yeah.
So in some states like Oregon, for example, they actually have expanded scope of practices for estheticians. They're called, in Oregon, they're called master estheticians. And they're actually, they are allowed, if you qualify, to actually do body sculpting as a master esthetician. And there are a few states that specifically grant an expanded ability by the Board of Cosmetology to do certain procedures that would typically be kind of medical procedures. You still would have to be careful as to whether, again, going back to the question, could you call them a medical esthetician? Well, I just said, like in Oregon, for example, they're called master estheticians. So you probably would get in trouble with your Board of Cosmetology by calling yourself a medical esthetician if you have a specific designation by the board. So you just, depending on the state, would really have to look at that and see is that even allowed.
Agree. And I think the second point that you were getting to is in some states it's set up by their delegation rules, which leave it up to the physician to determine if they believe that you have the right skills to provide that procedure. So this allows a doctor to designate it to an unlicensed person. And when I say unlicensed, I'm referring to an unlicensed medical person. And you do have a cosmetology license, but it's a little bit different if they have the right training. And as we know, Texas is one of those states. The twist is the Board of Cosmetology still does not allow the esthetician to actually practice medicine. So the esthetician is technically operating more like a medical assistant when they're doing this medical procedure. So it's almost like they're taking their badge off while they're doing it because they're no longer esthetician, they're just an MA. You would still need to be careful about using this term medical esthetician because the Board of Cosmetology could still have a problem with it.
Basically, don't do it. Don't use the term medical esthetician is probably the takeaway that we want from that.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think if I didn't say it clear enough, Michael, on this point is on states where physicians can delegate it to those individuals, we just tell them that, number one, as you said, don't use that terminology. And number two, literally, if you have it on your smock, because we know of a case in which it said esthetician and they were using lasers and that was not within their scope, they got in trouble with their board. So it sounds really silly, but you just take your badge off, whatever. And at that moment in time, you're a laser tech or you're a medical assistant doing injections, whatever it is that the doctor is delegated to. This sounds very silly, but in reality, that's the easiest way to be compliant. But, let's move a little bit forward. What happened with the Froes and Dr. Ivy?
We had a big call with the Froes and their attorney and Dr. Ivy. And the Froes were told about a half a dozen things that needed to be fixed. And they were willing to do those things, to have Dr. Ivy agree to supervise. Plus, they were going to pay Dr. Ivy over $200,000 per year for this role.
Ding?
What's that ding for?
It goes back to a discussion in other episodes. I was thinking about maybe too good to be true. Physicians typically get paid somewhere between, $18 to maybe even $60,000 per year for some type of supervisory role. And obviously I've seen it more higher for other type of roles, but they can be more in California, New York. I mean, that's a lot.
Yes. And let me be clear, the money made it tempting for Dr. Ivy. Remember, he really, really wanted to be compliant.
Yes.
And this was a big temptation. The hardest part of our conversation in this call with this kind of all hands on call I was talking about was the last topic, the medical estheticians. I explained that everyone was going to be carrying a ton of risk because only RNs, nurse practitioners, PAs, and physicians can perform body sculpting in California. The Fros were incredulous at the thought that they would have to go in and fire a dozen plus medical estheticians. And ultimately, they weren't willing to do that. And the deal fell apart because of this very issue. So as we kind of wrap up today's episode, what are some final thoughts, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, the first takeaway I hope everyone understands who's watching or listening to our show, you need to understand we're not against estheticians providing medical services. I hope you understand. Our job is not to say who can do what. Our job is to interpret the law and place you and hopefully your business in the most compliant position. So as you were describing that story, it's a California-based story. You have to put them in that best position. So when providers are using marketing terms in their title, like medical esthetician, that's a major red flag for us as compliance attorneys for a lot of these groups and organizations, where we would spot it. And again, I think I said this earlier, it's almost like a strobe light to your typical, truly well-trained medical board or cosmetology board who may be investigating. And finally, as we noted in many states like Texas, the physician can delegate these services to anyone. So if they were silly enough, they could delegate it to the best attorney in the galaxy if they wanted to. Or they could then delegate it to an esthetician who they thought had the skills, again, to provide that. At that moment in time, they really aren't an esthetician anymore. They're really, like I said, a medical assistant at that moment in time. Michael, what are your final thoughts?
I think I'm going to jump off where you were talking is understanding that a title, there's this marketing purpose that we understand is out there. There are professional purposes, which, by the way, Brad, I would take off your signature block, best lawyer in the galaxy, because lawyers have the same rules
Dang it.
Yes. So
hold on, Riley, cut that. Just don't let anyone know that I have that on my signature block, and I'll just fix it later. Okay. Okay. She's nodding.
Yeah. I got you. So you have the use of a name. You've got a marketing purpose that people are driven by. You have a license that tells you your limitations on what you can say. And then just a final thought we haven't really even touched on today is a title sometimes gives you certain authority to bind a business. Yeah. So there's VP titles we hand out like candy, or founder titles or whatever. If you're trying to give that to someone and that creates a perception that they can go out and sign something on behalf of the business, you are at risk of having that happen. Or you can inadvertently, if you're the person giving yourself this title, give yourself a fiduciary responsibility. That's a big deal. You now owe some higher standard to the business if you all of a sudden call yourself a CEO and you're not. So it's, I guess the biggest thought is just understanding there's more to the name than just best lawyer in the galaxy.
Although I am. All right, Michael, next Wednesday, we have our returning regular, Jay Riero. He'll be discussing when family dysfunction becomes business dysfunction.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.